In the world of One Piece, Haki is nearly synonymous with willpower. Another way it can be viewed is one's ability to manifest their willpower in either a physical way, such as with armament or advanced conqueror's Haki, or in a way that lets one affect their surroundings or the outcomes of situations they are in one way or another, with observation and with standard conqueror's Haki. Now, the GOAT himself, Silver's Rayleigh, has taught us two important things about Haki. One is that it is a power which is dormant in all the world's creatures, at least armament and observation anyway. Presence, fighting spirit, intimidation, it is not different from things that humans can naturally sense, such as these three examples. The act of not doubting, that is strength. Now, this last line is important, and we will come back to it later. The second thing he taught us is that Haki blooms in the most intense of situations, which often comes in the heat of battle, especially when it is coupled with one's power to believe in themselves. And here on Elbaph, there is one Strawhat who is set up to achieve both of these conditions at the same time, coupled with an intense desire to save someone they care about. This is none other than Soul King Brook. Yo-ho-ho-ho-ho! But before we get into why, let us have a look at just how much willpower Brook has exhibited in this story. While Brook has not directly shown Haki usage in the story, when we consider everything that he has gone through and compare that with where he is today, I would be hard-pressed to find a character who has shown more willpower and perseverance. With the exception of perhaps individuals like Luffy and Roger, and you know what, we're going to throw Bartholomew Kuma in here as well. Only in the cases of all three of them, this was far more condensed in a period of time. It was a lot shorter than what Brook had to go through. Now, from a young age, Brook was already facing adversity. He lost his family to starvation and was forced to live in a trash pile, also known as the slums of Esperia. Yet, from a young age, he taught himself how to survive, feeding himself mostly on grasshoppers and stolen curry powder. He taught himself music. He learned how to smile. What is important here is that he never gave up, and he showed a force of will, even at this young age, that exceeds that of many people in the One Piece world. We're seeing like the top 1% in the story, but if you think about your everyday average citizen, there's no shot they would be going through what Brook was and behaving in the same way that he did. What all of this led to was his encounter with Louvain and, by extension, Candel, which is what would lead to the first major change in his life. When given a chance at joining the castle, training under Candel, and going to music school, Brook did not shy away from any of this, and instead fully embraced the opportunities presented to him, and eventually becoming one of the two shining stars of Esperia and the head of its royal battle convoy. He was even given the honor of befriending and helping to raise the Princess of Esperia, Shuri. As the phrase goes, though, and Brook has experienced this many times, all good things must come to an end. And Brook would soon be faced yet again with tragedy not unlike what he had faced as a child. This, of course, comes in two forms, which may not be so separate. The fog/smog that overtook Esperia is the first of these two things. The smog had two very terrible effects on the kingdom. It ravaged the health of the people, killing countless individuals and causing those who survived to endure terrible coughing fits. The biggest blow to Brook from this, though, and really the whole country, was the death of Queen Candel, his mentor, his friend, and one of the individuals he looked up to the most. The second effect caused by the smog was the degradation of the country's instruments. Not only did this lead towards the replacement of music with those coughing fits, but it depleted the money that Esperia could make. Because of this loss in its capital, Esperia could no longer pay the heavenly tribute, and this would lead to the downfall of the kingdom. Now, throughout this period, there was at least one member of the kingdom who was able to retain his music and, except for during the loss of Candel, his smile. And that was, of course, Brook. He stood as possibly the sole entity to inspire the citizens until the very end. And while at the time of this recording, we do not know how this situation will fully play out, Brook has just walked in on one of the worst possible outcomes imaginable, seeing Adomi reversing Shuri having killed her father Louven. And he is face to face with now her, possibly Marcus Mars, and a maybe as of yet unknown Holy Knight. Frankly, I do not expect this situation to end well for him, and we get hints of that in the current story. But what we do know is that he does not give up here. In fact, he carries on to continue his dream of becoming a pirate. After the fall of the Esperia kingdom, Brook achieved his desire to become a pirate when he joined the Rumbar pirates. And he fit right in here, as they were a crew of musicians. He went on many adventures with them, sang plenty of songs. They even befriended a young island whale named Laboon. And frankly, things were going good for a while. Brook had once again found happiness. However, like with Esperia, this would not last, and a series of tragedies would befall him once again upon the crew entering the Grand Line. While things went well for them at first, with only a few hiccups, such as Laboon following them unexpectedly, and some damage occurring to their ship, which made them need to stop for repair, it was going good. Now, during this stop, they made their promise to return to Laboon and sing to him in the future. So they did manage to convince Laboon to not continue following them, which I really think would have added another tragedy to this list, but that one was averted. And then, before long, they were once again on their way. That is, until the disease struck. Captain Yorkie, along with a handful of members from the crew, contracted this disease while disembarking from a forest, and after being looked over, it was discovered to be uncurable. So once again, Brook experienced suffering and the loss of loved ones when he and the Rumbar pirates had to say goodbye to their captain and the other sick members of the crew. Yet, rather than giving up here, no, he pressed on. He yet again demonstrated that willingness and willpower to move forward, taking over as captain of the crew and, per Yorkie's request, embarking on the Grand Line once more, again leaving the sick members behind. This is even where he earned his first bounty as well. But again, despite things going well for a time, the Rumbar pirates and Brook, in his current form, would meet their end at the hands of an enemy pirate crew. The attack happened after they had entered the Florian Triangle, and while they did barely manage to fight off the opposing crew, the doctor of the Rumbar pirates did not survive, which is a big deal, And due to their enemy having coated their weapons in poison, all of the surviving members of the Rumbar crew were now on borrowed time. And they knew that this was the case. So in their final moments, they resolved to record one final go of Bink Sake in hopes that perhaps Brook could one day bring it to Laboon, as they all knew he might have the chance of returning even after death, because they knew of the devil fruit he had eaten, to some extent. As each of them succumbed to the poison, Brook counted down from a quartet to a solo. And while this marks the end of Brook's second major set of life tragedies, you and I both know full well that even this is not the end for him. Before we continue, if you like my videos, if you like listening to what I have to say, if you love my beard, please like and subscribe. A lot of people who watch the videos are not actually subscribed, and while that's okay, people can do what they want, I would love to change that. Not only would I greatly appreciate it, but it is tremendously important for small channels, which mine most certainly is. Now, back to the regular scheduled programming. Now, due to the Yomi Yomi no Mi, Brook was able to return to his body, but the ship had been lost in the Florian Triangle, already a difficult place to search, even as a soul. The whole area was covered in fog, and it took him a year to find his body. And by that time, he was all but bones, with the exception of his afro, which survived somehow because it had strong roots. Roots into what? Well, we don't ask those kind of questions. When he re-entered his body, of course he was bones, right? But by extension, this meant he was surrounded by the bones of his former crew. He went on to place them in coffins deep within the ship. But, because the rudder of the ship had been broken in the attack, Brook was completely stranded. And here, he would float for 50 long years, alone, finding any way he could to retain his sanity, such as leaning up at 45 degree angles against the wall. Realistically, most of us, me and most of the people watching this video, we have not even been alive for 50 years, which truly makes this sort of thing genuinely hard to imagine. And Brook had the willpower necessary to ride it out the whole time. He could have ended it again, that's how I'm going to put it, but he didn't. He needed to continue for himself, he needed to continue for Laboon, and this is just another touch of that willpower that we have been mentioning this whole time. And eventually, he encountered Thriller Bark. And here, you guessed it, his hardships would continue. When he disembarked from the ship because he wanted to repair the rudder, he saw the state of the island but ended up being captured by Gecko Moria and having his shadow stolen. Now, despite his best efforts to learn the weaknesses of Moria's devil fruit and kind of get more of a grasp of what was going on in preparation to retain his lost shadow, when it came time to confront Ryuma, he lost that fight and had to flee, returning back to his ship. But again, instead of giving up here, he pressed on. He trained himself for the next 5 years for a rematch with Ryuma. And this brings us to the point when he met the Strawhats. And we all know he fought alongside them at Thriller Bark, but well, that is a story for another day. So far, we have gone over what I believe to be the greatest amount of hardship any single One Piece character has had to endure, really, realistically, rivaled probably only by Kuma. When Brook first joined the Straw Hats, he was only with them for a couple of weeks, maybe, before they were yet again separated on Sabaody. There, he even attempted to defend Sanji and Usopp from Kuma, but of course, they were all sent away. By now, though, Brook had just been given yet another lease on life, and there was absolutely no way he would betray that. Instead, he became a global superstar, the Soul King Brook, and made preparations to hail the return of the Straw Hats. Having witnessed Luffy's own willpower, he was certain that his captain would return. And when he did, Brook was right there, prepared and ready to give up stardom to return to the crew. Now, in the current story, we have seen Brook exhibit unnatural willpower in other areas as well. One example I will give here is when he stood up to and fought Big Mom, and even swiped a rubbing of her poneglyph right out from under her nose. There are other examples, but for now, I think we've gone over enough to return back to the original question this video is addressing. Will Brook develop and exhibit Haki? I believe the answer is yes, and the conditions have been set up perfectly for him to undergo a Haki bloom. Elbaph is currently in pitched combat, which Brook has already been a part of. And from what we have reviewed so far, we know with certainty that Brook believes in himself, even in situations where he does have amounts of doubt. And as soon as he figures out that Shuri was being manipulated by the world government, I am certain he is going to be filled with an intense desire to save her. And so I predict that all of these things will come together in a crucial moment where Brook will unlock Haki. This is not to say I see him acquiring Conqueror's Haki. While that's not impossible, let's save that particular unlock for Usopp. But I think it is more than likely that he unlocks Haki down the armament path, the observation paths, or maybe even both. And for him, I think there's even a chance it will be uniquely tied to his music and maybe even his soul. So do I see him getting, like regular armament coding? Sure. Do I see him getting observation Haki at the base level to be able to predict attacks and kind of see what people are doing? Yes. Basic Haki, certainly. But I think it would really be cool if Brook also unlocked like a branch of Haki that's unique to him. Like somehow maybe he can use it to quote unquote coat his music within his own willpower, or his soul with his own willpower, and drastically improve the effects of what he can do. So when I look at the liberation of Shuri, which I do think is going to happen, I believe it's going to come down to two factors. A combination of the Sun God Luffy, the Warrior of Liberation, and Soul King Brook, and with something to do with his soul and his music. We already know that Luffy is the Grandmaster Liberator. That's a foregone conclusion. Shuri has very strong personal ties with Brook and his music, so that's the connection there. And while I think that they could do this combo as Brook is now, I certainly think it would be cool if, in a moment of him realizing that he needs more power, more oomph when it comes to freeing Shuri, that he unlocks Haki use and is able to utilize it to help stand up against Imu if he has to fight him again, maybe fight off another enemy that could be going after Shuri, and of course, increase the power and the ability of his music and his soul powers in a way that, in conjunction with Luffy, pushes Imu out of Shuri, maybe even permanently. Because dang it, these two deserve a happy ending. You better be listening to me, Oda. Okay? These two deserve a happy ending. And I think it would be really cool if we get to see Brook unlock Haki as a means of obtaining that. We're at the end of the story. We're in the final saga. Pretty soon, in the scheme of how long One Piece has been, One Piece will be over. I know Oda's been holding back on giving the Straw Hats Haki, and perhaps he will continue to do so. I'm not the author. Goda is. But I think here in Elbaph is an excellent time for many of the Straw Hats to either master their Haki or utilize more of their Haki, or in Brook's case, unlock his Haki and finally gain the ability to manifest the sheer willpower that we know he possesses. So what do you think about this? Do you see Brook unlocking Haki in Elbaph? Am I completely crazy and off the mark here? Sound off in the comments below. I would love to hear it. And with that, I would like each and every one of you to have an excellent rest of your day.